Hello everybody, and welcome to today's video where I will be talking about backliners in Battle Brothers. So, terminology. What is a backliner? A backliner is a brother that typically sits behind your front line. Okay, that seems pretty obvious. Now, first what we want to know is why would we make a backliner? Why would we not just make a frontliner? Well, take this guy right here for example. He has killer melee skill, but his melee defense kind of sucks. So you wouldn't necessarily want to put this guy on the front line because he wouldn't survive very long. If I leveled melee defense with this guy, he'd probably have like 20, maybe 22. Maybe he would have low rolled and we got a 15, 18. And you don't really want 15, 18, 22 as your frontliner. But he's not useless because he still can get, what's that, 93 melee attack from just base rolls. So he's still super useful as a backliner where you won't get hit all the time. Other things is when you don't have high HP. So maybe you're a retired soldier and you maybe do have or a sword master and you do have the melee defense, but you know you have fragile or you're a background with low HP anyway, and that way you don't think you can survive the front line just by getting hit once or twice, so you can become a backliner that way as well. Okay, now that we know what we need for a bro to become a backliner, what stats should we level? Well, clearly melee attack, because melee attack is all these guys have. That's why we're keeping them as a backliner and not dismissing them. HP isn't that useful beyond a certain point, honestly. So let's think about it. A backliner won't get hit in melee very often because they're behind your other dudes. You can't really compensate for getting hit by ranged weapons because you're not going to take anticipation because that's arguably a really shit perk. And range defense is a dump stat, in my mind. So you can't stop ranged, but you can stop melee, because you're behind people. So when you don't get hit in melee that often, that means you don't need that high of HP. It also means that you can wear nimble armor, because you don't need to armor tank, because you're not getting hit. So you can wear 115 mail, 105 mail, I wouldn't wear 95, but you know, 130 or whatever. You can wear some pretty light armor. And that means you can do nimble, and you can have about 80 HP, 85 HP with nimble, and you'll be fine. This guy right here has got 85, and he's got perfect nimble. This dude here has got 90, and he's got nimble. Typically, you know, you hear, you know, you need 100 plus HP for nimble frontliners. Yeah, that's not a bad assessment. But with these backliners, you're not getting hit enough to warrant needing more HP. Same thing with resolve. You don't need a lot of resolve because you're not taking a lot of morale checks. You can't stop geists because they have range. You can't stop other bros being hit and like losing that way. But you know, being walked on, you're not going to get walked on that often. If anything, you'll walk on to people more when you're aggressive. You won't get hit that much to warrant having your own morale checks. So the need for high resolve kind of goes down. We have 40 here, which is probably unleveled ever, because we have +5 from arena, and we have 47. This guy I may have taken it like once or twice. I don't think you can just roll 47 on a messenger like that. But the last skill we want to talk about, well, the last two skills we want to talk about are initiative and melee defense. So you still want to have some melee defense, because if you do get walked on or you want to go into an aggressive position and you get in zone of control of an enemy, you don't want to have it be an auto hit. You don't want to know that you will be hit every single time unless they roll a 94 or above. So on this guy, I leveled up to 22 melee defense, but he's level 15, so I probably got about that 18 we were talking about. So he's not got frontliner melee defense, but it's something to make it like a 70% chance to hit or a 60% chance to hit as opposed to an 80 or a 90. But on this character here, we have 7 melee defense. But he has a shit ton of initiative and he has dodge. So let's take a look. Let's just go right into Black Monolith and we're going to see how much melee defense this guy has right here. Okay, jump cut, because I kind of forgot to put them in the roster the first time. How much melee defense do they have? Well, this guy here, he's still got his 22. I didn't take dodge on him. I arguably could have taken dodge on this guy just for fucking shits and giggles. But this dude here has 25. with dodge. So you get 18, and he's got the range defense from it as well. So he actually does kind of have a little bit of a buffer against goblins or whatever. So he has 25, 21 versus 22 and 7. So the initiative guy actually has won out with melee defense. And yes, he's got really good initiative. Not all your guys are going to have really good initiative. But if they can make it equal, if you could have 18 versus 22, that's totally fine too as well. So the two stats left that we're talking about are initiative and melee defense. With dodge, you actually get about an equal amount of melee defense as you would if you leveled up melee defense without any stars. And you probably don't have any stars, because if you had melee defense stars, you would make a frontliner. Which means that I think it's a better choice to level initiative over melee defense, because you'll get the same amount of melee defense with dodge, but initiative gives you more opportunities than just pure melee defense does. There's also that's a real practical way to look at it. The other way to look at it is you want to have really high initiative for all the cool things you can do, and it happens to give you as much melee defense as leveling it. But if you think leveling melee defense is better, I'll raise to you that dodge would give you just as much, plus all the other added benefits of having initiative. So, what are those added benefits? Well, for one, you don't need to take adrenaline anymore, because you just have high fucking initiative with dodge relentless, and you can go in front of virtually everything except for like champion goblins, anyone that's using adrenaline, some other goblins. Like, you can actually go before many goblins, and maybe there's something wolves. Sometimes you can even go before wolves. It's quite strange. And what this means is you can do this throughout the whole battle. So there are times when this guy would need to spend 20 stam to adrenaline, or he could not get a priority kill that he needs, but this guy can already. And you can see this dude and this dude in action in my my Lindworm stream video, my Double Chosen Extravaganza stream highlight, and the 22 Barbarians on day 81 video. And all of those chosen fights specifically show where this high initiative backline is actually super useful, and I love it a lot. Okay, so now that we have our stats, what weapon do we want to use? Well, it's pretty clear based on this picture right here that I'm using pole arms. Why would I want to use a pole arm over another reach weapon? Well, it's the flexibility of the backliner. Frontliners often get locked in zone of control, because that's how they work, and therefore they can't hit as many targets as they would want to. You can put quick hands on your frontliner and give them their own reach weapon, but that is a whole nother can of worms that we're not going to get into right now, because it's about building your backliners. But point is that the front line is inflexible in a lot of situations, and at most has a 2-tower reach with a zone of control locked in, but you have a reach weapon. But these backliners here, with the pole arms, can move 4, they have a range of 4 tiles every single turn, because they can move 2 with pole arm spec, and then they have a reach weapon because they have a pole arm. And you can always move 2 because you have Pathfinder. You can move 2. The only time you can't move 2 in attack is when you're on swamp or like oasis water. So otherwise, on forest, on snow, on hills, on anything, you can move 2 in attack, which is so incredibly important for adding damage where it's needed on the battlefield. These guys are here. If they need to help over here, you can go 1, 2, and you can reach. So you can go virtually anywhere on the battlefield. You can dance around, you can relocate. There's so many things you can do because you have Pathfinder and polearm spec. You can't do that with the pole mace, the pole hammer, and the long axe, because you can only move 1 tile and attack with those weapons. You're hampering your flexibility to like absurd amounts. It's so much better to have the polearm with polearm spec than it is to have the other backline weapons. And on the topic of polearms, which polearm is best? I love billhooks because the armor damage helps me kill enemies that aren't able to be easily killed with my front line. Because the backliner helps damage enemies that you won't just two-shot. The Brigand Raider will just die to your, your two-handed hammer and like a couple of hits. So you can have two frontliners just, 2v1 a Brigand or a Footman or anything. But things like Orc Warriors or Chosen are things that you can't really kill in one turn unless you're lucky or you have really good weapons. So the backliners want to help those situations out. And both those enemies there, the Orcs and the Barbarians, have high armor. So I go with the high armor damage. This is essentially a better pike. The Billhook has less chance to hit, but it's a far better pike because it has the effective versus armor. Next is the Sword Lance or the War Scythe, because they have Reap for the AoE, which is incredibly good in its own right. I don't like it as much because this one is an exception because it's a max roll fucking Sword Lance. But normally the Sword Lance has low armor damage, and that's exactly what I like about the Billhook. So while you do get the AoE, which may help for Overwhelm, I still think the Billhook is my favorite weapon for a backliner. Taking a look at the backliner build right now, this is what we have. We start with Colossus, then we can go Student. If you don't want to go Student, whatever. But Colossus, Student, probably Colossus Dodge, Student. Then we go Polearm Mastery, Nimble, Pathfinder, Berserk, Killing Frenzy, Relentless. Now, what are our last perks? So there are a few options here. You can go Fearsome for one, just to get those extra Fearsome procs in, and Fearsome is a super strong perk. There's Overwhelm, because you will be going first with your high initiative, so that's good. If you don't have the high base initiative, you could consider Adrenaline. You could consider Gifted for the extra melee attack, the extra initiative, and the extra stam. You could also take Resilient. Resilient is probably the weakest of these options, because what Resilient does is it stops you from losing all of your initiative to a stagger, so you can still act and use your overwhelms all the time. Although I don't think this is particularly useful, I'm still going to throw it out as an option. You could do Quick Hands and have a net Quick Hands and have make him a polearm duelist, just give him like a one-handed weapon in the back. Could go Recover. I don't think Recover's worth it that much. So I think your real options end up being Fearsome, Overwhelm, Gifted, and probably Quick Hands. You could maybe go Executioner or Crippling Strikes. There's a lot of things you could be doing here. But those are the perks that I would have as like flex perks to do with as you're needed. Back to these two. Let's just take a look. Right here we have 183 battles and 484 kills. This is initiative, but it's also the really good polearm. So a lot of that does come from having more damage to output than this other dude with the regular billhook. But this is basically double. His guy's 172, 225. Actually, it's over double. So more than double. And I can't put all of that on the better polearm. So I think the initiative build actually is doing a whole lot for this guy, because I can just act before those enemies and get the kills before this dude is right here. And are you saying maybe their damage is equal, but this guy's getting more kills? That could be true. I haven't actually tracked the damage they do comparatively, but I think it's safe to say, in my mind, that the initiative build is the superior alternative to this non-initiative polearm build right here. Another thing I want to have of note is that you can make polearm duelists, and you can bring these guys in the backline. I have a few of them right here. Guys, they have like mediocre melee defense. It's not the best thing in the world, but I've given them a polearm, and then they've gotten quick hands with the with a regular duelist weapon. I've talked about this build before; it has its own video. But the point of this is a guy who can maybe be a frontline for a little bit, and then when he runs out of stam because he doesn't have recover, then you can switch and just become a polearm backliner. Same with this dude right here. They're pretty effective, and they're good for when you have low front line. You can just bring them in, flex them into the front line, but they can fall back as necessary. So, I think I've hit all the bases that I want to with this backliners video. I just want to stress that you should try using initiative for these backliners. Initiative is one of the most important stats for the backline. Melee, skill, stam, initiative. And the initiative grants you your melee defense. You don't need the resolve because you're in the back. You don't need that much HP because you're in the back. So level it a little bit and leave it alone. Take the pole arms and the Pathfinder. I've talked at length in multiple videos, and there are numerous clips of me playing on this channel that explain and show why Pathfinder polearm spec is a huge power boost over the other reach weapons. But that is all for me today. Comment below if you have your own builds. I would like to hear them, and we can have those discussions in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.